So I turn up in Ethiopia, and here I am about to run the conference. First morning, it's about 4 o'clock in the morning. Does anyone speak at conferences and stuff like that here? Because if you do, you'll recognise the 4 o'clock in the morning syndrome. Yeah, you wake up and you start doing stuff, and there's no point trying to go back to sleep because you can't. There's absolutely no point trying to read a book because everything you read you have to go back and do again that evening. And I'd noticed the sun was up, so I thought I'd go for a walk. So I step outside this luxury hotel, and before I can take a second step, I've got a little mate. He's 8 years old, he lives in a shack in the street, and his name's Joseph, and he says, "Are you going for a walk?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "Can I come too?" And I thought, "Oh, I don't know." And I suddenly realised even if I said no, he was going to come along. So I thought, better walk with a friend than an enemy. So, "Come on, Joseph, let's go." So we've been walking for about 10 minutes, and he suddenly points at my hip, and he says, "Is that a Walkman you're wearing?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "You're going to wear it every day when you come out?" And I said, "That was the plan." He said, "Would you mind dreadfully if you didn't?" I thought it was a curious question. I wonder where we're going with this one. I said, "Well, why wouldn't I?" And he said, "Well, I know it's your first day here, Chris, because you've just told me that, and it's 4 o'clock in the morning, so there's hardly anyone around, so you won't have noticed. But here in Addis Ababa, there are hundreds of thousands of people who are desperately poor." Right? And when you're that poor, Chris, you might look at something like that and think if you stole it, you could sell it and make enough money to feed your family for 2 weeks. Right? It's a little 8-year-old. And before I could even process that thought, he then said, "And I'd hate you to leave Ethiopia thinking that we were thieves." And it was only on the aeroplane home, as I drifted into that whiskey-induced haze that I call sleep on an aeroplane, that the full magnitude of that one sentence caught me, because in those few final words, Joseph had shown me 2 qualities that I don't see enough of in organisations around the world. He had shown me phenomenal pride in himself, in his community, in his country. And what's more, he'd taken responsibility for the actions of others. But look at these people. Look how they walk. Look how they're holding their heads. Look at the expressions on their faces. Look at the pride that's oozing off these people. And when you go out of here, if you go on the underground, see how many people you see looking like that. When you get back to your company, wander around and see how many people you see looking like that. And then ask yourself the question, what are we doing that's taking away that natural pride, that natural confidence, that natural strength? Because we're all born with it. So that night we were around the fire and I'm chatting to the elders and I said, 13 camels, what are they? It turns out they're 2/3 of their assets. Right? I'm thinking, there's 2/3 of assets. So, but they seem to be a little girl. How does that work? So it's dead simple. As soon as the sun rises, she goes to one of the elders and says, and the elder says, "Where are you going to take the camels today?" And she says, "Well, such and such a place. I checked it out last night. There's shelter for me, grazing for the camels, and it's perfectly safe because I checked footprints." Fantastic. I said, "What happens next?" They said, "Well, at sunset, she brings them back." I said, "Doesn't anyone go and check on her during the day?" At the end of the day, when she brings them back, does she have to explain what happened? Your sort of camel herding debrief meeting. They said, "Is that what happens in your organisations? You give a responsible person a job to do, you check they're doing it, and when they've done it, they have to tell you how to do it." It's, on extraordinarily large numbers of occasions, yes. They went, "Gosh, your leaders must have so much spare time." This little girl is 4. She's just been given her first job. Her first job is that little baby goat to look after it. And what they do is they don't give them a baby goat. They do this. Let me ask, are you a vegetarian, Georgina? No. That's an important question for me to know at this time. Could you put your arms out? So they get the child to lay their arms up. They lay the goat in their arms and they say, "In your arms is the future food of our community. Tend it well and we live. Let it die and we die with it." How do you feel?
Responsible.
Very responsible. Go down for you. Okay. Thank you. So suddenly, as a 4-year-old, you feel incredibly responsible because they've told you the value of what you're doing. They've given you your job in the bigger picture. Now, I've tried to describe that word in modern industrial terms. You cannot call that job menial. Okay, it's probably not, it doesn't need as much education and training as some others, but is that a menial job? Looking after the future food of our community? Now, the other thing that happens is that once I've given you responsibility, I'm not going to steal it back. So what would happen often? If you imagine us wandering past 3 days later, goat's looking a bit icky-boo, right? Manager pops in, goes, "Don't worry, I'll sort it out for you, Georgie." Picks it up, brings it back. Every time it gets a bit ill, they take it away, bring it back, take it away, bring it back. Eventually it gets to this height. You've never dealt with this crisis. How do you feel about your goat?
Not as connected as it would have
It's not really yours anymore, is it? So where's your pride? You see, the moment you steal responsibility back from someone, you steal away their ability to be proud. And therefore goes your engagement, there's the passion gone, there's the talent gone, there's everything gone. You have to give people genuine responsibility with value and leave it with them, irrespective of the risk. I did ask on my last trip, because I kind of save a little question for each trip so I can justify to my business partners why I have to keep going back. I asked someone on my last trip, one of the elders, I said, what if the goat dies? He said this, better to lose one baby goat than a human for the rest of their lives.